Okay, everyone. Just as another reminder for people that have just joined, this is being recorded and will go on our website for people to either review again or for people who can't attend this webinar today. Welcome to Hamerkop's Internship Program 2024 webinar. My name's Kevin. I'm the business manager for Hamerkop. I head up the recruiting function and the internship programs, and I will be your host for today. Presenting are two of our consultants, Hazel and Tatiana, who you can see on the screen, who have both been through the internship program before and are currently employed with us, and they're going to share their experience so far with Hamerkop. Just a little housekeeping. You are all on mute, apart from the presenters and myself, and all your cameras are off. And we will be using the chat facility for any questions that you have. As I said, you're all on mute, all the cameras are off. So if you have a question, please pop it in the chat. And after I've gone through a bit of housekeeping and a little bit of what we're looking for this internship program for 2024, then we will kick off with Tatiana and Hazel going through a little bit about themselves and what they've done, and then straight into the questions. Okay, so the internship program for 2024. Before I hand over to Tatiana and Hazel, let me just run through what we're looking for. So we're looking for 2 interns this year, potentially. Currently applications running from February now, right the way through to the 8th of March. Will then be reviewed as tranche 1, and then from the 9th of March onwards through to the 15th of April will be tranche 2, and I'll explain what happens with the process once the ball is rolling on that later. So we're only accepting applications through our website. So if you've come through LinkedIn, I will have hopefully redirected you to the website. It's just so that we can track it on our tracking system, and therefore broadcast any messages that we need to have about next steps or your application process. What we're looking for is a 1-page CV and a 1-page value proposition letter. So if you read the application all the way through on our website, it will explain what a value proposition letter is. It's not a covering letter. It's just what you can bring to the table that is not covered in your CV. Interns will be required to work in London 4 days a week. You'll be mentored by our lovely team, paid the London living wage. It's each one's a 4-month internship, and there is potential employment thereafter. However, we cannot guarantee a job at the end of the process, but 90% of interns have been offered roles in the past, and 2 of them are with us today. Hazel and Tatiana are clear examples of this. Can I just say that it's important that anyone who is serious about working with Hamerkop should be in this beyond the 4 months. So this is not just an internship and then off you go. This is for us to sort of evaluate Hamerkop as a business, and us to evaluate you as a potential employee, and then offer you potentially a role afterwards. As I say, there's never any guarantees with any internship or employment, but we're just making that clear that hopefully we're all in this for a long partnership. But what we can offer is working on a broad range of assignments, have responsibility, and get to travel sooner. And I'm sure Tatiana and Hazel will explain the travel and working with our clients overseas a bit more during their spiel in a second. Hamerkop, as a really strong reputation for a small organization. So you'll get to do a lot more with us than you would do with a larger company, for instance. And it's a great way to start your career with Hamerkop. There's no better company to start your career in this sector with. So we'll do the introductions with Tatiana and Hazel shortly. But after the intros, what we're going to be doing is they're going to be asking and answering the questions in the chat. I can see there's already some movement in the chat, so put your questions in there, please. Or if you've got any questions about what they've done and you want to sort of target them, please sort of just say for Tatiana or for Hazel or for T or for H, and we'll get them to answer it. Otherwise, they'll just take it in turns. If there are questions that we can't cover or don't get time to cover, because this is only running until 2:45, I'll pop my email address when they start talking into the chat. Please feel free to email me. If you come up with a question afterwards, please use my email address to any questions that you have. Fire them through to me. I'll answer them as soon as I can with the help of the team, and I'll be delighted to respond to you as soon as I can. And I think that's all of the sort of prelims and housekeeping. Let me just check. Yep, that's it. So I'm going to hand over to Tatiana now. I'll put my email address in the chat. Tatiana will we'll talk about her experiences, and then over to Hazel, and then they will go straight into the questions. So everything is good there. So over to you, Tatiana, while I mute myself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this webinar. So I'm Tatiana. I'm a consultant here at Hamerkop, and I joined the internship program in June of 2021, so just over a year and a half ago. Prior to that, I initially did a bachelor in political science, so nothing to do with climate change or anything. And then after that, I sort of fell into the climate space by doing a couple of internships and got more and more interested on the sort of overlap between climate change and sustainable development. And so I really wanted to pursue that a bit more. And so I did a master's degree here in London called Climate Change Management and Finance at Imperial, which sort of covered a bit of everything on the climate change space, a bit of science of climate change management and finance as well. And then straight from this master's degree, there was an option to do an internship program instead of another type of assignment. And so I did this internship following on from my studies, and then started out as an associate consultant straight afterwards. Yeah, so that's sort of briefly how I got to Hamerkop. But then, yeah, throughout my internship, for the first couple of weeks, I did mostly sort of internal research projects. So I looked a lot at different co-benefit standards. So these are sort of standards that can be combined with a carbon certification to showcase the positive co-benefits of carbon projects on local communities, on biodiversity, on sustainable development. And so looked at how these different standards could be incorporated in our business. Then I also did benchmarks of forestry carbon projects to understand a little bit more about the impacts they have. And then sort of once I sort of understood a little bit more what carbon markets were about, how they worked, how the different standards function, because it's really complicated, it can take a while. Then I started doing some project work. But so it was really nice to have this start of the internship, which was a bit more slow, where I wasn't exposed to client work at first, and then was really exciting, obviously, to start working on client projects. The first project I worked on was not really to do with carbon markets, but it was with the World Food Programme in Chad, and they were looking at how clean cooking could improve the resilience of host communities and displaced communities in a couple of refugee camps in Chad. And so, yeah, that really got me hooked. And since then, I've worked on a really big range of different assignments. So we obviously, quite a lot of the work we do is on certifying carbon projects. So from really early stage pre-feasibility or feasibility studies to see whether there is a feasible carbon project there. So we've worked on a couple of those with Hazel as well. And then the whole certification process. But then I've also worked on a lot of more policy related projects. We tend to work quite a lot in sub-Saharan Africa and in many countries where French is also spoken. And I'm a French speaker, so a lot of the projects I've done as well relate to policy in sub-Saharan African countries that speak French. But yeah, sort of a brief introduction, and I think I'll let Hazel continue. And then, yeah, if you have any questions on anything I've mentioned, please add them to the chat.
Thank you, Tatiana. Hi, everyone. My name is Hazel. So yes, I did. I guess just to start off from my college experience, I did a Bachelor's of Science in Ireland in zoology. So I guess it was always kind of related in that my focus within that was a lot on conservation and biodiversity and kind of working with local communities to uphold those. So I guess it was somewhat related to the type of projects we work on, but I didn't know it then. But then to get more so into the kind of space, like sustainable space, I did a master's in climate change with the focus on ecosystem science and policy. So it's more of this kind of bigger picture approach to that master's. So that was really nice as it opened up a lot of avenues to then start applying. And I also did 2 somewhat related internships, but loosely related. So there was one in helping out with the biodiversity audit in the different campuses within my college in Dublin, which was Trinity College. And then I also did an internship in Spain, which was to do with One Health. So the idea that, or One Health and planetary health, the idea that, the health of the planet directly relates to the health of humans and the health of animals, health of the planet, how it's all connected. So I guess I kind of always had a specific interest in this idea of connection between us, between how everything functions, how it affects us, how the land affects animals, how the animals affect us. I've always had a somewhat interest, but didn't really know what to do with this. So then when I started applying, I applied for this internship a few months after I graduated from my master's. I do see that was one of the questions. So I did apply after I'd graduated. And then I guess what drew me to Hamerkop was this idea that a lot of the projects are based on improving, like not only improving the environment, but also improving livelihoods, or they might have biodiversity aspects. So it was just kind of piquing a lot of the interests or skills that I mightn't have had directly, but I felt that they were relating. So it did draw my attention. And then obviously the aspect of working with clients in different parts of the world. So as Tatiana mentioned, a lot in sub-Saharan Africa, but also with Latin American countries or with Asian countries. So I was very intrigued. So I applied, and then I started the internship in May last year. So I was the year after Tatiana, and I guess the most latest of the interns to still be here. And then I only finished that internship in September. So I started officially in September in Hamerkop as an associate consultant. When I first joined, I think this is what one of the nice things about the internship is that it is quite related to the current workload of everyone else in the office. So when I joined, there was the initial plan was to start with kind of more research, more getting familiar with carbon markets, doing some background research, getting familiar with the topics. But because when I first arrived, pretty quickly the workload was really high for everyone. So I was kind of, instead of starting off slow like Tatiana's, I started off more so helping out everyone with any tasks I could within the projects they were working on. So I found that route to also be really helpful because it kind of just threw me in, and then I was becoming familiar with carbon markets through actually having to help out with client related work. So there is that option that I could go either way. It's just depending on what projects are currently going on. So that was something that I really liked, that there was these different options, but then also the projects, as Tatiana was saying, are all very different. So I think when I first joined, a couple of weeks in, I was helping out with a wetland related project and how to better utilize like visitor fees or fees that hotels might have to pay to be on the premises. So it was very much different than what I was expecting to be doing. But then straight into cook stove projects. I think I worked with Tatiana on one of my first projects, and that then led me to my own kind of separate project, almost a little research project within the internship, which was becoming really familiar with cook stove projects, how they're rated, how they calculate their carbon reductions, how these are then related to the carbon credits. And it was a project I was working on myself, but obviously with the help of everyone. And I found it a really interesting way and really nice way to become particularly familiar with one section of the work that we do, so that going forward, I had this kind of basis to continue on from. And yes, I'm currently working on quite a few mangrove related projects, which is very interesting. Mangroves wasn't something I was particularly familiar with beforehand. And then, yes, cook stoves, always present. And then I'm actually going to India next week for a reforestation project to do some ground truthing and kind of capacity assessment of the implementation partners over there. So yeah, brief, but also I hope informative. And that has been my experience and the lead up to it at Hamerkop so far.
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Tatiana. Before we start picking the questions out of the chat and just let some of that massive information sink into everybody, so they can start popping it in their questions. I've got a couple of loaded questions for you both, which may come as a bit of a surprise, but they're not they're not difficult. So this one's for you, Tatiana. The Hamerkop team support, coach, mentor, and help train the interns. How did you find that?
I definitely needed a lot of support, training and mentoring at the start, because I had I'd heard of carbon markets, but more in the context of compliance carbon markets and the EU ETS and all of that, but I hadn't really done anything on the voluntary carbon markets. So it was all very, very new to me. And then the other thing that was very new to me is anything to do with forest and forestry, because I came from more the humanities and political science and management, and so anything to do with forests and how forests grow, how to quantify carbon stocks in a forest was completely new to me. And so it was really helpful at the beginning. I had a lot of one-on-ones with Olivier, our CEO, who was really good at sort of coaching me and sort of giving me little tasks to do all the time. But then the team is really helpful and really friendly as well. So it was so easy to just ask anyone, hey, could you help me on this? Do you have any advice on this? So it was good.
Thank you. And I think one of the takeaways is that if you feel that you want to do this but you're a bit hesitant, then you will be given training and mentoring. And there's another reason why our team is in the office 4 days a week, is to help you. Collaborative learning and mentoring happens in the office all the time, and that's why it's key for us. That's why we mentioned that in the advert that the intern will need to be coming into the office 4 days a week. So that's great. Thank you, Tatiana. Hazel, I have one for you before we go to some of the questions. How is it when you're working as an intern that you're researching and supporting consultants? How can you sort of just bring that to life a little bit for everybody? What the research and supporting the consultants would look like on a daily basis, and maybe for just a random project that you've sort of assisted on.
Mm-hmm. So as Tatiana says, like, it went both ways, in that if we felt we needed help, we could ask, but then also if someone needed particular help, especially I was unsure of the project, everyone was really nice and being very clear on what they wanted my help with, or recommendations on where to begin, say, research. I know I had a science background, so I was kind of used to the overall idea of doing kind of research, say, into forestry. I was more so familiar with, but everyone was very clear. And then we did have I also had the check-ins with Olivier. So if something was just not making sense, or I felt maybe my research wasn't actually benefiting in maybe as much as I thought it could, I could ask Olivier. But then I guess everyone's just very aware that you are an intern and you're here to learn. So I found that really nice that everyone was just really supportive and very clear on either what they wanted help with or where I could help. And then obviously it's a bit of intuition as well, and just taking that and taking it further if you feel you can, or I guess discussing with Olivier further if you think you have more ideas. So it's very malleable, I guess.
Turn myself off. Thank you, Hazel. Yeah, our CEO, sorry, our head of advisory. You can find Olivier and Guy on a website, who we are, with Tatiana and the rest of the team. They've all got knowledge of various parts of what we do, and they're all there all the time, with time zones allowing, and travel, etc., to be able to help, coach, advise, and just run past things. That's the same with the interns. Is you won't be left on your own. We're a team, and we will support you and guide you, and hopefully grow you as well, as we continue to do with the team members that have come through the intern process. Okay, let's get some. Let's start at the top with the questions. Hazel, if you want to pick up the first one, I think you already mentioned that one, didn't you? So if you just want to clarify that one, and then we'll just go down the questions as they've come in, if that's okay.
Yeah, I see in the chat from Alexander, yes. Is it acceptable to have graduated a couple months ago? That's fine. I had graduated, I think my master's had a weird ending. I finished the master's in December. I didn't actually graduate until halfway through the internship, technically. But I'd finished my master's a few months before applying. So yes, that's not much. That's not an issue. And then I guess I might just cover the one in the Q&A box rather than the chat, Tatiana. But someone's asked there, does previous experience in the voluntary carbon markets, could it help both in the application process and during the internship itself?
I think, yeah, it would definitely help. It would help sort of hit the ground running for sure, but it's not essential, but it would absolutely help. And yeah, it would, in this beginning phase especially, where I was just learning about carbon markets and how they function and how it's governed, it would help you hit the ground running and maybe even work on client projects a lot earlier.
Fantastic. Let me pick up the non-French speaking question. Yes, we've got sort of other languages as a desirable, French being among those. But of course, we will consider non-French speakers. So I think that's quite an easy one just to sum up there. Okay.
Hazel, what has been your biggest challenge during your internship experience?
That's always a tricky one. I guess the initial challenge is trying to wrap your head around such a niche topic that I, yes, may have had kind of environmental and sustainable background, familiar with maybe what the actual projects were doing from a scientific perspective, but no idea on carbon markets or climate finance, any of the processes on how one becomes a part of the carbon market. So I think the biggest challenge is wrapping your head around that, and also realizing how big this carbon market world is. In the same way it's a challenge, though, it's also, I mean, there's just so many opportunities within it. And Olivier did say when you start the internship, he said to me anyway, that it's not a topic he expects you to be all knowing of anytime soon. It's you become familiar with certain areas. So although it was daunting at the start, you kind of realize certain people were more knowledgeable in certain areas. We all follow our own little topics to keep the rest of the team up to date, because it's just such a broad area that, yeah, it can be hard to keep track of it all, but everyone's just helping each other out. So
and it's constantly changing. Everything is constantly changing, and methodologies being updated, and new rules are coming out. So if you're an expert one day, you won't be the next.
I guess there's a question here from Matilda. how long is a typical project, and did either of us see a project, or were we able to see a project from start to finish as an intern?
Yeah, so project length really varies. So when we work on projects, I mean, one project could be the certification and the first issuance of a forestry project, and that would take a couple of years. But we wouldn't be constantly working on it for the 2 or 3 years or however long it would take. It would be sort of on and off, so ebbing and flowing. But then there would be other projects which would be much smaller. So we could do an eligibility study for a mangrove project, and that might take a couple of weeks. Or we could be working on something else altogether, which might only be worth 4 or 5 days of work. Others will be 3 months. So it really varies based on the project and the project type. Hazel, does the company have plans to expand their projects to other regions in the global south?
Yes. Well, I think since I've started, we've had a lot more projects reaching in, or just kind of we've had a lot more projects expanding from our initial scope in sub-Saharan Africa. Like I know we've got a few in Asia, we've got a few in Latin America. I don't feel there'll be any plans to not expand. It obviously just depends on the appropriate nature of the projects. Are we the best people for the job? Is it a job that we want to be a part of? It does depend. But yes, as far as I'm aware, there is always plans to expand.
Yeah, I think also one of the reasons why we started off working quite a lot in sub-Saharan Africa is because our CEO Olivier is French, and he had a lot of connections in sub-Saharan Africa, and so that's where we started out. But obviously now we're branching out to wherever, and we're not limited. So if we get asked to work on a project somewhere, we're happy to do it. So there's no geographical limitation, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'll pick up this next one from Ngozi about what kind of experience does Hamerkop look for. You're just coming out of university, so we know you're not going to have a lot of experience potentially about, and I think it's a very difficult fit to come out and come into us. That's why there's a lot of mentoring going on, and it's ongoing throughout the internship and associate consultant roles. There's a lot of investment in you to get to where you need to be, and it is a complete educational piece. But let me just go back to the application because there are some and in the job description it says, you know, a requirement is we're looking for a BSc or master's degree in technical or quantitative field related to climate change and environmental sciences, i.e. conservation, forestry, agriculture, marine ecology, energy, geospatial analysis. That's the sort of thing that will jump out at us when we're looking through the CVs. That's not to say that if you're not in that space, that you're not going to be interesting to us. But obviously you need to have a passion, and you need to have some sort of experience in your education that's gonna sort of align with what we're doing. So I think that pretty much answers that one. We've already spoken the French question. If anyone is, you know, learning other languages, they're a desirable for us. They're not a requirement, but they're desirable. We've got a lot of people in our team that speak various amounts of languages, which is fantastic for our clients, and it does come in handy. Okay, so who's next to answer the next question?
There's a question on what the lead up to projects looks like and how we build relationship with our counterparts. So again, it sort of depends. A lot of the projects we work on for clients we already know, and we've worked with them before, and they've enjoyed working with us, and so they continue to work with us. Others have been referred to us by people we've worked with, so it's come through connections. And then others we respond to certain proposals or to bids, and so we'll respond to a job description essentially, and so we'll have to put together a proposal, and then so we'll put together a proposal. Sometimes this will also involve a couple of calls with the client just to understand really what the objective of this piece of work is, how we can best prepare our proposal, and then we would put a team together and send that proposal off. But yeah, that is essentially the lead up to the project. We try and try and not bid for too many open bids with big multinational international organizations that are open to everyone, because they're very competitive. And yeah, we try and avoid spending too much time on proposals if we can get jobs quite easily elsewhere. But yeah, we usually respond to quite a lot of limited proposals, so where we get invited to submit one. But yeah.
I think there's one question here. It's kind of seems to be in both the chat and the Q&A about the working environment or the working culture in Hamerkop. To try and put it in kind of maybe like a daily perspective, there is a lot of opportunities to work by yourself, obviously if you're researching or just trying to read up and learn in your own time. But then a lot of the projects are teamwork, as Tatiana was saying. Some are long, some are short, and especially, if it's something with a quick deadline, there could be a fair few people on it, or if it's something that's a bit longer and might need continuous input, it might be, there might be less people working on it. So there will be a chance for a lot of teamwork. And then I'd probably say even more teamwork. I'm not sure about you, Tatiana, but I'd say there is a lot of it is team-based, even in your own research, checking with someone else to see if that makes sense or whatnot. And then for the kind of culture, we're a little tight-knit group. We're not many, so it's nice, and we're expanding constantly. Since Kevin's joined, we've had a lot more company outings, which has been really nice. So we go out for company dinners, maybe I'd say once a quarter, the odd after work drinks. Then just in the office, obviously, if you need questions, like it's very normal to just talk around the office and just go up to anyone and just see if they're free for a chat or just to answer a question. So it's a very nice atmosphere in that regards. Quite relaxed. There is that option to work from home one day a week as well. So it's nice to have that balance. And yeah, there's a really nice food stall, food street across the road as well.
Let me just jump in there, Hazel. We also like to empower all of our employees to speak up and have come up with any areas of the office space that we're working in, or the just what the tools that they work with, any of that is can be, if they're not happy with it, or they want to see some change, we will take that on board, and we will do our very best. We're constantly reviewing what we do and how we do it. We're constantly reviewing the office space, the machinery, the IT, just everything that we do, just to make it a nice place to live. We do staff surveys so that people can anonymously answer questions, so that we get that sort of feeling that, and we will go back to them and answer generally in our quarterly meetings, that we care, and we want everybody to feel that they are heard. So that's very important to us here at Hamerkop. So I think we've got probably room for 2 more questions. Apologies if we can't answer all of them, but if you both choose 1 question each, if we are unfortunately unable to answer the question that you've popped in there, please email it to me, and we'll do it another time. We've only got another 10 minutes of this webinar. Tatiana and Hazel this is part of their sort of delayed lunch break, so it's very gracious of them to give their time to speak to you, and I appreciate everyone that's on the call as well, giving up some of your important time to hear us. So if we choose 1 more question each, and then I'll just go into the summary part of this webinar, and then we'll close it off. So great, over to you guys.
I can try and take one that sort of combines a couple, but there's a couple of questions on like the skills or software skills or any skills that are required for the internship, and whether geography is a desirable degree. I think for the purposes of the internship, really what's really important is desire to learn, and sort of being able to work relatively autonomously as well, obviously as a team. But yeah, desire to learn is really important because our projects are so different from each other, that even if you do have a very specific skill set, you're going to be put on a project that's completely new to you, where you really don't know what you're doing. So yeah, really desire to learn is super important. Obviously, things like Excel, PowerPoint, Word are useful, but it's not something we use. Well, especially Excel, it's not something we use on a day-to-day basis. And actually, I think myself, I'm not good at it at all. And actually, Kevin has um, so yeah, I'm taking like an Excel course now, so I'm not good at it, but I'm trying to improve. But yeah, in terms of I don't think there's anything that's absolutely crucial to have. If anyone has any GIS experience or any technical skills, I think, yeah, that'll be really important to highlight in your application, but it's definitely not necessary. And same with degree. Yeah, if it's anything related to climate, forestry, ecology, it's really valuable. I think in your geography degree, if you've done something that relates to that, you can highlight it in your application. But I don't think we have a specific list of skills that we need, because we're all new and we're all learning. And yeah. I don't know, Kevin, you have anything to add to that? But
no, not at all. But if there are skills that you want to learn, we offer all of our full-time employees a chance to upskill. So as Tatiana was alluding to, we've signed up with an Excel course, Microsoft accredited Excel course diploma. So the team can jump on that. It's about 15 hours, but it will upskill them, and the company will pay for that. So we continue to invest in our workforce, and if there's any good ideas that they feel they want to bring up at any point, it will always be taken into consideration. I think that answers that one. Hazel, do you want to pick up the final question, please? And then I'll try and do the sum up.
Yeah, just to add to Tatiana's answer, I found one of I can't remember who said it to me, but at the beginning of the internship, someone mentioned the idea of transferable skills. And I really clung to that. It was just whatever degree you have, whatever experience you have, to try and understand how it would be transferable. And then obviously, whether it's in the application process or in the interview process, to really kind of hone in on, well, actually, this experience I think will have relevance for this reason, or whatever way it's phrased. But I found the phrase transferable skills to be really helpful to try to make sense of how my degree will be useful or how my experiences make sense to bring to Hamerkop. But then I guess just a question I've seen kind of phrased in a few different ways is just obviously trying to get a better sense of what the day-to-day, or when you go into the office, what does a day's work look like? I know you've mentioned that there's loads of different projects and there's lots of things you could be working on, but an average day, I guess I'll just use my own average day as an intern as an example. But it's 9 to 5:30, an hour lunch break, and then there is a free coffee machine downstairs. So that was always the start of my day. And then so obviously the first half hour is usually maybe checking in with others, seeing maybe what's best to prioritize for the day. Obviously, if you're helping out with a project, it might be better to prioritize that if there's a deadline, or you might have just time to work on maybe a separate task Olivier has set for you. So it's obviously just depending what your current workload is. But I always found the first half hour of the day to be a nice time to make sure I'm working on what's either the most helpful, or just to maybe prioritize my own maybe subtasks. And then usually everyone has lunch downstairs together, normally between like 12 and 2, somewhere in between that bracket, depending on obviously what meetings someone may have, or if they're meeting someone, or whatever the reason is. But I did like that aspect, and I found it's a really nice aspect then to talk to everyone informally and not about work for an hour of the day. And then yeah, I guess the actual hours of work, it really does depend, but obviously you'll see everyone working around you. You'll kind of get the gist of prioritization as you go. And yes, we do have little soundproof booths inside the office. So if you're not a big fan of having meetings and talking around everyone, there's also that option too, which was really nice, especially if it's if you're going to be talking loads and don't want everyone listening. It's nice to have that option as well, which I hadn't really heard of in other office spaces before. Yeah, I think there's during the summer, if you're here for the summer months, there's a park nearby that we tend to go for lunch as well. So it's a nice day today.
Yeah, and you can see we've got an Instagram page as well, and you can see some of the more fun things that we do, like our Christmas event, the escape room, which we all managed to escape from, which was great. And also, some little socials to mark people's birthdays, work anniversaries, arrivals and departures. So you can see all that on Instagram. You can see some of the work that the team have done overseas on LinkedIn. And obviously, there are some blogs on our website on one of the pages, and that's where the career page is, which is where you can apply for this role, the internship program roles. I've popped the link in the chat as well that will take you straight to that, and that takes me nicely into segue into summing up. So this recording, when it's finished,
Kevin,
sorry, Tatiana.
Yeah, very quickly. I think just like there's a couple of really easy questions that I can answer in 2 minutes, hopefully.
Sure.
So a personal highlight of working at Hamerkop, I think definitely has been traveling and being able to see the projects that we work on in person, so for real. So I've had the opportunity to visit a Red Plus project in Zambia, reforestation in Argentina, and cook stove in the DRC, and that's where the work we do, it makes sense. Like, we understand why we're doing it. We get to meet the local communities that are impacted by the project and understand the impacts on the ground. And that's really the reason we do the job we do. So that's the sort of highlight of working at Hamerkop. Otherwise, there's one question on certification standards. And we do mostly work with Vera. That includes the VCS, SD, Vista, and CCB, and Gold Standard. And then surprising thing I've learned about working in voluntary carbon markets, I think, is really that, of course, the climate aspect is so important because that's a carbon credit, but really the co-benefits are crucial, and how they impact communities, how it impacts biodiversity is really very, very important. And that's something I didn't realize about the voluntary carbon market as much before. Sorry, Kevin.
Just putting a little note in here about if we haven't covered your question, please email me. So I was just saying, as a nice sort of segue into summing up, that's this recording will go on our website hopefully tomorrow, if we can get it on there for tomorrow. Just in case you want to run through it, and it's for other people obviously that haven't been available today. Just running through some summary parts. Apply please through our website only, through our careers page on our website. That means we can manage it all together on our applicant tracking system, our ATS. You please read the advert all the way through. It's very key that your CV is one page and you have a secondary page, which is a value proposition letter, which basically is not a covering letter. It is basically saying what you can do for the internship and for Hamerkop that is not directly reflected in your CV. The process will be in probably 3 rounds. We'll do the review in 2 parts, as I said before. February up till the sort of around about the middle of March, I think it was the 8th of March, will be tranche 1. And the second from the 9th of March onwards to the 15th of April. That's when the applications will finish, on the 15th of April, at the end of that business day. They're the 2 that we're looking for. we're going to, for each one of those tranches, we're going to look for 10 to 12 to take through the first interview, which will be with our head of advisory, Guy Warren, and maybe one of our consultants as well, supporting him or myself. Those that are shortlisted from there will be given a technical assessment or a case study to work on, which will be easily achievable, but we're looking for style and whether you can answer the exam question that we're going to pose to you. And the successful candidates from there will go on to 4 or 5 of them will be put forward for a final interview with our CEO, Olivier, and the successful applicant. Start dates are flexible with you, but if you are looking, if your master's or your degree doesn't finish this year, then we're really not going to consider you. So it needs to be you need to have finished your sort of your sort of learnings this year to be considered for this. If you've got any questions about that, my email address is in the chat. Please reach out to me and ask. As I say, the start dates for both of these internships are flexible. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I will have the questions responded to you as soon as I can. I'd like to thank everybody for attending this webinar from Hamerkop for the the internship program 2024. I'd like to thank Hazel and Tatiana for taking part and presenting, and thank everybody for attending. And that's us closing this off. Thank you.